Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I want to welcome you to the Engaged Employee Podcast. Our mission is to emphasize the relationship between the employee and the workplace with the goal of enhancing engagement levels to create a more productive and satisfying work environment. While many organizations strive to create a more engaging atmosphere, they often miss the mark by forcing connection with big team building events like axe throwing or escape rooms. Those activities only leave employees with a short-lived sense of belonging. Organizations may also try smaller and more suffocating events like happy hours or group birthday celebrations that their employees feel obligated to attend. As a social connections and business culture coach, I've found that to create a stable, engaged, and productive workforce, there needs to be a shift in focus from mandatory fun and manufactured connection towards building trust and authentic conversation. Join me and a guest as we dive into social wellness strategies for the individual employee, techniques for developing interpersonal relationships with coworkers, and even some approaches for leaders to enrich the overall organizational culture. The Engaged Employee Podcast starts now. Hello, my name is Coach Lee Hopkins and welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast. My guest today is Janice Litvin. Janice is on a mission to help leaders and teams banish burnout in their organizations. As an award-winning corporate wellness speaker, certified virtual presenter, and SHRM certification provider, she wants to help as many people as possible take their mental health in consideration, specifically teaching them how to manage stress to prevent burnout. She has developed unique strategies to maximize engagement in workplace wellness, as well as develop stress management methodologies available in her workbook called Banish Burnout Toolkit. Our conversation today will be focused on wellness for the company at large. Janice, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Coach Lee. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm delighted to have you too. I know we started to talk a lot behind the scenes and I am pumped. I'm very excited to learn what's in this little book that's called the Banish Burnout Toolkit. But before we get to that, we want to let the audience know a little bit about you. Who are you? How did you get started in this?
Well, it's kind of a long story. So back when I first started working in the corporate world, I was a computer programmer, and it turned out that was not exactly a fit for a number of reasons. One of was the culture. And I remember individual employee had very little, no one asked you what you wanted to do. Nobody asked you what progression you wanted to make. No one asked you if you wanted to be a trainer, a recruiter, a manager, or anything. You just came to work and did your job. And so after a while, and I saw how other people were feeling. And so after a while, I thought, this is not exactly for me. Then I found another job that was the best job, which I'll describe later. And this route, I got to where I am today because I want to help other people not be burned out in their organizations.
Oh yeah, that's really key. We coaches often, I don't know if you consider yourself a coach, but I do consider ourselves a coach. I'm like, I want to help that person I was 10 years ago. Everything that I faced, the burnout, the frustration, the disappointment with being in the workspace, whatever it is, I want to help that person. And it sounds like that journey was very similar for you.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
I'd like to know, so you talked about tech and being in this industry where it's even now notorious for overwork, code, just do the thing. It's part of the culture. And I'd like to know, who is it that you help? Do you just help those people or do you help organizations all over? And how do you do that?
Well, while my background is in banking for IT for banking, everybody's burned out. Everywhere I go, every single client group is telling me the same thing. We have too much work and not enough people to retain top talent, and we're all doing double duty and we are exhausted. So when a company says, oh, we're all about well-being, and they have a big calendar full of well-being activities, that becomes a small Band-Aid over this bigger wound called work. And so people really want to they want to be heard. They want companies to understand that they can't work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. They're burning out.
What do you mean we can't work 12 hours, 6 days a week?
Well, they can physically, but I'll tell you something. After a few months, first of all, their children are like, "Where's mom and where's dad?"
Hmm.
And leaving children unattended. I mean, it's one thing school or whatever to come home after school and take care of themselves, but to not see their parent o'clock at night is not good for anybody.
Yeah, I especially like the idea of being home,
Yeah.
just period. Just like I like being able to separate the space where I'm going to work and that I'm going to be home. When the pandemic hit, it was really difficult to not work from home or to not live at work. I think the term was coined. They're living at work, and we're really trying to separate those pieces. And so I understand that you help organizations separate those pieces because even though, and it's to your point that they may have a giant wellness calendar, they're practicing it at work and they're still working. How does that work?
So it's not working. That's the problem. And I think it filters down from the top. Change has to start at the top with the culture and leaders understanding that well-being is a way of life. It's not just a pretty little calendar. And I'm being facetious, and I know it's not just a calendar full of well-being activities, which I laud you for being focused. Well-being has to be filtered through the culture is comes through and the values. So, for example, having a policy that no one works 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, having a policy not sending emails work hours, having a policy that we encourage everyone to take their vacation time. And the most important policy, see something, say something. So that means managers pay attention to burnouts and clues, educate yourself people if you do see something is has gone awry.
So I like this idea of education. Of course, the more you know, the more you grow, the better you are able to handle these situations. And so managers here, because we're focusing on organizational wellness, and managers, the middle managers often get it pretty hard. They get hit pretty hard because they have to watch out for the wellness of their employees, but they also have to be responsible for the output of their employees and report that upward, and keep them engaged and keep them active. How do they not get burnt out?
The managers, well,
Yes.
yeah, I mean it's the same for everybody. The managers have to take care of themselves just like everybody else does. So that means everything that it means for everybody else: taking breaks, going outside, making sure that when you get home you leave your work stress at home and you leave your work stress at work and leave your home stress at home, and that you're not yourself with some burnout clues like mood swings, snapping at people, trouble eating or sleeping. If you catch any of those issues in yourself or anybody else, that you pay attention to them and you would not let them go on and on until you're so burned out you need to take time off.
Yes. So, everyone out there listening, managers are people too. All right. You are people
Yes.
too, and you have to work to your own wellness. You don't have to be a super person who's working above and beyond. You're going to burn yourself out, and your team's going to be let down, and your whole life is not related to the work that you do. But we're here to talk about how you might manage that stress, how you might not get burnt out. So, can you share with us some tips on how to do that?
First of all, get outside. This sounds like the most mundane, simplest suggestion in the world. The moment you get outside and the sun hits your skin, vitamin D is activated and dopamine, the happiness chemical, is permeating through your mind and your heart and your soul. and you feel better instantly. When you're getting ready to go on vacation, I hope you are taking vacation. And when you're getting ready to go, let's say you're planning a trip to Hawaii, put pictures of a Hawaiian bulletin board, whether it's virtual or a physical, and your body starts to that dopamine before the vacation, into really enjoy yourself before the vacation. And then after the vacation, savor those good feelings and memories. I wrote a whole blog about savoring, which you can find on my website. And I'm sure Coach Lee will give you that later.
Absolutely. Yes. So your website is really easy to remember. It's janicelitvin.com. And of course, it'll be in the show notes. But you only give us just one tip. I know that you have a whole book full of those things.
Oh,
Can you tell us? Because
speaking of
that's a
books,
tease.
speaking
That's
of
a
books,
tease. That's a tease. Tell us about this book that you have. That's not fair.
speaking of the book, this is my brand new book called Banish Organizational Burnout, 26 tips. The key tips that relates to what you're talking about, Coach Lee, is communication. A lot of times when we begin to feel stressed, closet ourselves in. We don't want to tell anybody we're struggling. First of all, staying in close communication with your team, your loved ones, someone you trust. Check in with each other every morning. Hey, how's it going? What are you working on today? Do you have any issues? Is there something I can help you with? How's it going? And get them to ask you in return, because communication is one of the keys. You know, loneliness, which is some research I'm doing right now, loneliness in the workplace is becoming an epidemic because, first of all, many people are working. I have no problem with. What I have a problem with is when you get so I have no one to communicate with. So every morning, check in with somebody, whether it's a loved one, a friend, a colleague, or a boss. Either pick up the phone, like a phone, or hop on a Zoom, Zoom call for 10 minutes. How's it going? What are you guys doing? Let's have a quick check-in, 5 or 10 minutes. How's it going with this big project that's due Friday? Can I ask somebody some questions today at 1 o'clock, whatever? So communication is one of the biggest
It's huge.
encourage. It's huge. And most people forget about it, even though it's so obvious.
Yes, it's absolutely huge. I was in the same position. I worked at a company and then they became fully remote, and I was more isolated than I've ever felt before. And it was just pretty awful. I didn't think to just get on the phone or just message someone and say, hey, I want you to know that I'm still here, essentially, because I'm just all alone. I'm completely isolated. You don't know anything about me outside of my work, but I want you to know that I'm here. It's really difficult to do that. And that's what a passion I have for this Engaged Employee podcast, a passion to get people involved and connected so that people will reach out to you if they haven't heard from you in a minute. They haven't heard from you. So I really like that idea of connection. I know you have something else to help stimulate that, bringing communities together. You have something called the Banish Burnout Roundtable. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So I do a free a month. So I have two keynotes that I do. One is called Banish Burnout Success for the individual. And then my new keynote, Banish Cultivate Thriving Teams. No matter which keynote you've seen or would like to see, I hold a discussion round. My next one is Friday, September 13th, and the event will be uploaded onto the LinkedIn events page. And everyone is welcome. All you have to do is click the QR code to register. And in there, we talk about anything related to preventing burnout. That means communication or lack of communication. That means I have too much of a workload. That means setting healthy boundaries. I don't know how to set healthy boundaries with my boss. I'm too busy without seeming like I can't do a good job. It's okay to say, do not have the bandwidth. Work on this new project. I simply do not have the bandwidth. Let's look at my whole list of responsibilities and see what we can shuffle around so I can work on the new project. But people say yes to every request, the more work that gets dumped on them.
Oh boy, do we know that. There's a saying that the work flows to the competent. So if you continue to do a good job with this, you're going to get overwhelmed with the frustration of having so much. You're doing a good job and you need to set those limits to really help you continue to do a good job. So I would imagine, because I want to go to this roundtable as well, I imagine that there will be ways to help us use our words to set those boundaries. Yes, and practice. 'Cause it's hard to do when your boss is in your face. Like, you're used to saying yes. How do you say no? How do you say no? I think this is very, very powerful. And I want to thank you so much, Janice, for coming on and sharing these resources with us. I know that I didn't mention this, but you can also get this burnout book for free, right? Complimentary book if we just go to your website.
Yes. So this book is new. Like I said, I wrote it a few months ago, just in time for a keynote workplace wellness event. And I've decided to give it away for the time being. JaniceLitvin.com/book. This 26 tips to help managers prevent burnout, starting with the leadership.
Right on. Thank you so much, Janice. And where else can we find you? Because this will be in the show notes. But for those who are listening and would just like to find out right away, how can we find you?
LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Janice Litvin. I hope you'll put that in the show notes as well.
Oh, yeah. All of it will be in the show notes, but it's just for people to hear you say it. So go to JaniceLitvin.com. You can find her on IG as well, Janice Litvin, and also on Facebook at Workplace Wellness Speaker. Wellness Speaker is where you can find her. Active on mostly LinkedIn, all the platforms, but you'll get a message. You'll get an answer on LinkedIn. That's how we connect.
Really quickly.
You will get one quickly. So I want to thank you, Janice, for coming on and sharing your story again and some amazing tips. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah, I loved it.
And there you have it. Another insightful episode of the Engaged Employee Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the world of employee engagement, leadership, and workplace dynamics. The Engaged Employee Podcast is brought to you by the Patterns of Possibility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Before we wrap up, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible guests and, of course, our loyal listeners. Your support keeps us motivated to bring you valuable content each week. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking and want to learn more about how we can help you or your organization make more meaningful relationships, go to patternsofpossibility.com and book a friendly conversation with me. Or you can email me your questions at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Stay connected with us and engage with fellow listeners by following the Patterns of Possibility on LinkedIn. You can also catch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop. And if you prefer the audio version, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. Thank you for being a part of our journey to create workplaces where passion meets productivity. Until next time, I'm Coach Lee. Stay engaged,